If you're a real estate agent and have never done a comparative market analysis, a CMA, or if you're an experienced agent and want to exercise some CMA muscles you haven't used in a while, you're going to want to stick around for today's training. Hey, Darren Thompson here, broker and owner of Stewart St. James and founder of Agent Next Level. We have Jason Rose from MLS Property Information Network, MLS PIN, one of the largest MLS systems in the US, joining us today to level up our skills with comparative market analyses. A CMA. We're going to deep dive MLS PIN's CMA tool called Pinergy CMA, and separately, we're going to look at Cloud CMA, which is one of the most popular CMA platforms out there. We're going to start literally from ground zero, how to access these tools, give you a full rundown on the process of using each tool, compare and contrast the tools and tell you why agents use one over the other, and share some best practices to get the most out of your CMA tool. I'm going to jump in occasionally with some constructive suggestions based on my experience, so let's get into it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm a trainer at MLS PIN. Today we're going to be talking about CMAs. It stands for Comparative Market Analysis. Let's talk about what it is. So a CMA is a presentation for a client or hopefully soon to be client. And what it does is it presents to the client the market that exists for their particular property. So it educates them on the market so they can figure out if they want to sell, where they want to be in that market. It also lets them know that you know the market, right? You're presenting this information to them so they get to know you, they get to know the fact that you know the market well. So that's kind of what it's all about. Now, where it comes into play, I think in the grand scheme of things, my thoughts on this is somebody's thinking of selling their house and they might go online, right? Everybody starts online these days. And maybe they get a Zestimate or they go to another site and get an AVM. So AVM stands for Automated Value Model, which is what a Zestimate is. It's just basically a computer program to figure out what a property is worth just based on data that's readily available. So they get this figure back on what this AVM thinks their property is worth. And they're like, oh, that looks good, but let me take the next step and go and reach out to a real estate agent that's in the market that can kind of analyze the data and present to me. And so that's kind of the next logical step, I guess. If somebody goes online, they get an AVM and they go to a real estate agent that's in the market that presents a CMA. So comparative market analysis, comparative. So you figure out the market for their property by finding similar properties to theirs, maybe close by, that sold recently. It's got the same sort of features that in this particular market seem to matter. That's essentially what it is. Now, the good news is there's so many different programs that do CMAs, like so many different programs that do CMAs. That's good news, I guess. The other good news is that if you learn one, it's not that hard to switch gears to a different CMA program because at the core, they function the same way. And today I'm going to kind of go through two different CMA programs and you'll see the similarities between the two. We're going to cover Pinergy's built-in CMA. This comes with your MLS PIN membership. And we're also going to talk about Cloud CMA, which also comes with your MLS PIN membership. At least a pretty substantial base account to Cloud CMA comes with your MLS PIN membership. There are some features that you'd have to pay for if you want access to, but they're not vital and it's not really a big deal. You can make that determination yourself. But the major difference, I think, between Pinergy's built-in CMA and Cloud CMA is Pinergy's CMA is sort of a no-nonsense CMA. You know, it's just focused on the data and presenting the data, where Cloud CMA is more of a polished CMA and it's got educational pages and third-party integrations. So it's a little bit more polished is the way to put it. But we're going to cover both. I'm just checking questions that are popping up. Yeah, so somebody say you're essentially doing the same property identification that an appraiser will do for the bank when the property is sold. I mean, there's definitely differences between an appraisal and a CMA. A bank wants a hard figure. A CMA is just looking at the market and presenting maybe a range of the market, not a particular value. Similar, I guess, in some ways, but yeah. There's actually on Cloud CMA, it's interesting that you asked that question. On Cloud CMA, there's an educational page that you can include in the CMA that explains to the client the difference between a CMA and appraisal. So there's actually an educational page that's done up that you can add in if your client's a little bit like, what's the difference between this and an appraisal? So I'll point that out when we get there. All right, so to get to access to Pinergy's CMA, you go to Tools, and then you go to Comparative Market Analysis. So this is basically Pinergy's built-in CMA. And then Cloud CMA is just up top. You click on Cloud CMA, and that's a third-party program. So we've kind of partnered with them and made that available to you, but it's not directly our product, Cloud CMA. So we'll start with Pinergy. So you go to Tools, and you go to Comparative Market Analysis. And normally what you'd see here is a list of past CMAs that you've done. I haven't done it yet, so I'm going to click on a new CMA in the upper left-hand corner. to kind of open up a new CMA. So click on that. And the way that you construct the CMA is you go through these tabs, and just quickly what each tab does. So the subject property, we're basically going to fill in the information on the subject property. So the client's property that we're trying to determine the market that exists for this property. So that's the subject property tab. So fill in information on your client, fill in information on the property, that sort of stuff. Comparative properties is where we try to find similar properties to our client's property. So something similar that sold recently, maybe that's currently on the market. When you do a comparative market analysis, you usually want a complete picture of the market. So you don't just want solds, which are good comps, right? I mean, they're definitely good. But if everything's sold, I'm just going to throw a number out there. Let's say everything's sold for 100,000, but everything on the market's asking 150. You can't ignore what's on the market. So you want a complete picture of the market. So usually when you're looking for comps, you want definitely solds, and you'll probably put a lot of weight behind solds more than you will than what's on the market, but you do want on markets. But you got to keep in mind that on market can ask whatever they want, doesn't mean they're going to get it. So, you got to take that with a grain of salt when you start analyzing the comps. So we try to find similar properties under Comparative Properties tab.
A pro tip and a reminder, you want to focus your comps on properties that have sold in the past 6 months. The market has said yes to these properties, and it's the data-driven way to appropriately guide your seller clients. Do not get caught up, and don't let your seller do so either, in looking at what's active and listed for sale right now that has not yet sold. No one has said yes to that property at that price. While you may or may not choose to include in your CMA a property to which the market has said no, you should have all those comps in your back pocket as well. Listings that are expired, canceled, temporarily withdrawn. We don't know why those properties are in that status, yet we do know with confidence that the market has said no to those properties at that price point. Knowing these facts and being able to articulate this level of insight to a seller is game-changing in demonstrating your authority and expertise in your hyperlocal market.
And then price adjustments. Every CMA program that I've run into has an option for price adjustments. There's a lot to talk about with price adjustments because there's a lot of different thoughts on it, on how to go about price adjustments. I'll try to cover all the ones that I've run into, and you can make a decision on price adjustments, but it's interesting. But basically the idea behind price adjustments, and I'll talk about more about this when we get into it, is that you're trying to adjust the comparables that you found to line them up better with the subject property. So again, we'll talk more about that when we get to that tab. It's optional to do price adjustments, by the way. You don't have to. Net sheet, another optional page. And what the net sheet does is it presents to the seller all the costs associated with selling their house. So to say, look, from what we're seeing in the market, your house might sell around X amount, but you owe this amount, plus you got to pay the tax stamps, the smoke detector inspection, and here's what you're left over with. Now, there's been some grumbling amongst agents. They don't like the net sheet because the client could hold them to those numbers and their estimates. So it's optional if you want to do it or not, but my job is to just teach you how it works if you do want to use it. And then prints, just choosing how you want to print, what pages do you want in your final presentation, that sort of stuff. It's just what pages do you want included, what pages do you want to skip. Yeah, and those are the steps. So let's go through the steps. So we're starting on the subject property tab, and anything with a star is required. So it wants a name for the CMA, and so just a save name. And usually, you can name this or save this CMA under any name, but normally it's either the subject property address or the client's name, just because it's easy to reference later on when you have a bunch of saved CMAs. So we're going to be doing a CMA on 7 Reeve Street in Worcester. I just always use it. I don't know. I try not, I try not to actually do a CMA close to where I'm presenting with a CMA, because I get into these arguments where I'm like, oh, we can adjust X amount for having an extra bedroom. And somebody's like, no, it should be this amount. And then somebody's like, that doesn't matter, and it should be this amount. And I'm like, oh, so this way, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Worcester market, so I can't get that grumbling. So that's why I'm doing that. So 7 Reeve Street is going to be the save name. And then we have a notes field. And this doesn't print out. It's not even required. It's just if you want to type in some notes that come up when you bring up the CMA, you are welcome to do so. That's it. So we have the owner's information. So it wants some of the owner's information, and it uses this in the CMA. So there's a cover letter or cover page, cover letter, I believe. And it's going to make the letter formal by putting the name of the client at the top, I think the address and the date. So if you fill in this information, that's how it's going to be used. So we'll say a client's name is Jason, last name Rose, and we have other fields for second owner. if they apply, and we have fields for the street address, the owner, city, state, zip, phone, fax, and email address. So feel free to fill all that in. But for time constraints, we'll probably just skip over it. So there we go. So we named the CMA, we filled in the owner's information, albeit very vague here, just their name. And then we've got this is a step that's pretty important, and it's a little bit of confusion, I think. So what the system's asking for here, and it's not really saying well, is it wants to know, where do I get information on the client's property from? Like, what's the source of information on my subject property? And so there's options here. There's a little radio button for each option. So here's one option, here's another option, and believe it or not, there's a third option that's not appearing here that under your account would probably appear. We'll talk about that. So this first option is selected by default, and it's probably the worst option, and I don't recommend it. It's where this is where you are the source of information on the subject property, which is fine, right? But it's limited you to just these fields. It's very limited, just these fields. That's all the information you can fill in on the subject property. So I'm not a big fan of that one. The other option is you can go to this option here, and you can say, well, look, the subject property, my client's property, was actually in the MLS like 5 years ago. And I found it, and here's the MLS number of when it was in the system 5 years ago. So grab all the information from that MLS number and plug it into the CMA as the subject property. There's some downsides to that. The information could be old and there's no real way to update it. The subject property may never have been in the MLS, so there's no way to find the MLS number because it was never in the MLS, so you wouldn't even be able to use this option. And I guess the third thing is you're using another agent's information and description, which is just kind of, so, but you can use it. It's there. It's an option. If it wasn't in the MLS too long ago, like a year or two, you might want to use that option. But the third option that's not appearing here is actually the best option. So let me just talk about it. You will have a third dot that appears right about here if at any point you have entered into the Pinergy system what's called an offline listing. So what I mean by that is, before you even start your CMA, you'd do this if you wanted to use this option. You would go to the listing section of Pinergy. Normally you can hold down the control key on the keyboard and then click on one of these icons up top, and it opens up another tab for that section of Pinergy. So you can have multiple sections of Pinergy open at the same time. So this is what you want to do to create an offline listing in the system. And what an offline listing is just a listing that you're ready to post that you haven't posted yet. That's an offline listing. Like, you filled in the form with some of the information, you're getting ready to post the listing, but you have not posted it yet. Does not have an MLS number, other agents can't see it. That's an offline listing. And in order to create an offline listing, it's really easy. You go to the listing section of Pinergy, you click on new listing, and then you fill in the information that you have or you want in the CMA on the subject property using this form. And I mean, there's so many fields, so fill in whatever you need to fill in. It's 8 pages of fields. And then you don't have to fill in everything. Whatever you fill in, and when you're done, you hit save, and you now have an offline listing. It's that easy. So now when you start your CMA, you'll have a third circle right here. You can say, I want to use one of my offline listings as the subject property. So you click the third option, there'll be a little drop-down arrow. You select which offline listing you want to use, and that's that, and it's done. And what's great about this option is it gives you complete control to fill in as much information as you have or want on the subject property. There's no limitation. You can upload photos, which are good if you have those on the subject property. And even better, if you present this to your client and they're like, great, let's list this property, let's put it on the market. The work that you did to create the offline listing isn't lost because you can just then take your offline listing and hit post. So it's not wasted time. So that's what I would recommend. Unfortunately, like, again, time constraints, I'm just going to use an MLS number and say this is a subject property, grab all the information from this MLS number. So I want to do a search to see if 7 Reeve Street has ever been in the MLS before. And there's a quick way to do that in Pinergy. There's a couple ways. I mean, you could do it from the search, but there's a lot of selections you got to make. I just go to Tools and then Property History. So Tools and then Property History in Pinergy, and basically you can type in any address and it does a complete search of the database. It doesn't care if it's sold 20 years ago, it doesn't care if it's currently on the market, it'll just bring up every MLS number ever in our database with that address. So it's an address only search. 7 Reeves in Worcester. So 7 Reeves Worcester search, the entire database. And it says, okay, that's been in the database 1, 2, 3, 4 different times. Here's the list date for each time it was in the system. So the most recent occurrence in which 7 Reeves Street was in the MLS for sale or rent, right, is this MLS number. So I'm going to click on that MLS number to bring up like all the details of when it was in the system in 2011, look it over, make sure it's still relevant, and then say, you know what, I'm going to plug this into my CMA as the subject property information. So I'm going to copy the MLS number because I need that copy. And I'm going to go over here and paste it in. Now, this might not work because I opened up a new browser to log in and it might have logged me out. But I'll just do it again if it messes up. So save. Oh, it looks like it took it. Good. Okay. All right. So next up, we have the system has advanced us to the comparative properties. So we got to find similar properties to our 7 Reeve Street. And it gives us 3 options. There's really only 2 options, and there's really only one good option. So the search MLS. So find similar properties to our subject property to try to determine the market by searching the MLS database. Of course, we want that option. It's awesome. Add to cart. What? So add from cart. So this is basically if you've done some prep work, meaning that before you started your CMA, this is optional. But let's say before you opened up your CMA, you were searching in Pinergy under the search section and you created a cart called 7 Reeve Street. You can go to carts and create carts in Pinergy. And you're kind of searching for comps and you haven't started the CMA, but you're searching for similar properties to your subject property. You're adding them to this cart. And then when you get here, you can just say, look, one of my carts has all my comps. So find this cart called 7 Reeve Street and just put all those listings in as my comp so I can move on. I've already done that work. So this is if you did prep work. But otherwise, if you haven't done the prep work, you got to search MLS to find the comps, or you can search public records, so public tax and assessment records. We pay a company called the Warren Group to go out to the town halls and gather the public tax and assessment record data. They format it for company use and resell it to other companies, I'm sure, but we've bought a database of public tax and assessment records from them. So the advantage to public records, if you have a subject property and it's very unique and you cannot find enough comps, you're like, this is difficult, you could turn to public records to try to pick up some additional comps. And that's good because even if things weren't in the MLS, they're going to be in public records. Every sale is going to be in public tax and assessment records. So if it's not in the MLS, it still could be in public records. You can pick up additional comps. The downside is, well, it's public record information. So, you know, the reliability of that is definitely, I wouldn't give it that high on the scale of reliability. Plus, there's no photos, there's no list price. When you go to analyze your comps, because there's a lot of analysis that you present to your client, like what was their list price versus sale price ratio? How many days was the property on the market? Public records doesn't know. It just knows when the sale occurred and how much, and that's that. So you can use it, but I wouldn't think it would be your go-to, but it's up to you. Either way, you can mix and match too. But we're going to use the MLS. So I'm going to hit search MLS. And it basically brings us to like the old style Pinergy search. They need to update this to the new one. But anyways, this is where we go. This is where we put in the criteria to find our comps. So it's got some stuff selected, but not much. It's single family, sold and rented. I just want sold for now. And then it's got Worcester. So it's got that set up already. When you have sold selected, the system looks here and it says today minus 6 months. So we're technically looking back 6 months for solds that are single family in Worcester. And if I click on the count button, there's 518 potential comparables. I'm not going to go through 518, so we need to narrow this down. Now, some agents grumble here and say, why doesn't it present me with comps? Well, if the system presented you with comps and you were to just take those comps and run, you would be doing an AVM, an automated value model. Your input is what makes this CMA stand out. So yes, there's a lot of work to be done here, but it matters because of the nature of the CMA. So that's my thoughts on it. If we were doing a full CMA, and I'm doing a more of a quick one just to show you how it works, we would probably search all the on markets, even under agreement and sold. So I'll probably do this sort of search. I want some that are on the market, some that are under agreement maybe, and some that are sold so I can get a complete picture of the market. But for now, just for time constraints, we'll just attach some sold comparables. So anyways, now this is where it gets a little tricky too, because like, all right, towards the city, parking matters, right? Western Mass, it doesn't matter. It really probably doesn't matter at all. You could park your car in the middle of the road, it'd probably take a week to get towed. So it's a completely different market. So you're gonna know what matters in your market. And so that might affect how you search for comps. But I think there's some universal fields that you can use that probably matter. I think probably most people will agree, like living area matters, bedrooms matters. Those are pretty safe. And I think location can matter, like so far from the subject property, that could matter. So maybe we'll try those. So if I look at my subject property, let me just bring up that screen. So here's my subject property, the one we're trying to determine the market for. Let's find some similar properties. So the subject property has for square feet, 1,966 square feet. So I'm gonna go over to living area square feet, and I'm just gonna put in a range, something that's close, let's just say 1,800 to like 2,200. And that brings us down to 80. So awesome, we're down to 80. I'm still not going to go through 80, so we got to get down further. Now the bedrooms is, what is the bedroom? 4, but I could do 3 to 4. Maybe it's like 3 large bedrooms versus 4 small bedrooms. So I might do something like 3 to 4. See what that does. Now we lost 1. Let's try distance. So if you want to do a distance or radius search in Pinergy, you just plug in your subject address here. So this is going to be your starting point in your distance search. And then you just say how far out in miles you want the results. So 7 Reeves, and the zip code is, what is the zip code? 01607. 01607. And then how many miles out do you want? So I'll just start with 2 miles out. So from this address, go out 2 miles and find me single families that sold last 6 months, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 1,800 to 2,200 square feet, and it's got to be in Worcester because that's where the subject property is. So count. We are down to 17. I can deal with 17. I can just look through 17. And I don't want to keep adding criteria. This is my thoughts on this. I don't want to add criteria and get this down to a number that's going to be the number of comps I have, because I don't want to choose the comps from the search page. I'd rather choose them from the details, like looking at all the details. So get the number down to a manageable number and then just go from there, like run this and then look at each one and say, is that in the same sort of market as my subject property? So somebody that was scheduling a showing for the subject property, if this was on the market, they would have probably scheduled a showing for that property and this property and this property. They're in the same market. So I'm going to hit search now. And it'll bring up those 17 potential comparables. We haven't chosen anything yet. And just get rid of this. That doesn't matter. Okay, so here's a list of our 17, but there's not much detail. So what I'm going to do is tell the system that I want to select all 17, so they're all checked, and I want to view them in detail. Probably should call this like a detail button, but view. So view in detail, and that'll bring up the first one of the 17 with like everything, because I have full report selected up here. So this is everything. And you can look this over, and you're going to spend most of your time here trying to find comps, make sure it's a good comp. If you've determined, let's just say that this is a good comparable, I'm not saying it is, you would hit add to CMA. And then if it's not a good comparable, let's say this one isn't, you would just go over to the arrow and kind of skip it. You wouldn't hit the button, you just go to the arrow. That's certainly not the same. It's completely different. Let's say that this is the first property I've determined to be somewhat of a good comparable. It's close by, similar features, even the year built's probably close. I don't know what year built is on this one. 1910, yeah, the other one's like 1900. I don't even know if it goes back before then. So yeah, anyway, so I'm gonna add this as a comp. So I'm gonna hit add to CMA, this button, and it'll just tell me that it's done it. So it says new comparable added, I have 1 comp added, so great. So now when I go to the next property here, this will update and show 1. So if I arrow over, this now shows 1. And then you look over the next property, that's a weird outside of house, it's just weird. I think it's probably this window thing here. Anyways, next one. Yeah, that's kind of different. I don't know. All right, anyways, it doesn't matter which ones I'm choosing, right? Because you guys, as long as you know how it works, you can talk to your manager and brokers. They'll give you advice on what makes a good comparable. I am not the authority on that. But let's just say, hypothetically, I've determined this to be another good comparable. Again, not add to cart, I always hit that button, add to CMA. Add to CMA, it says it's been added, I click OK, and you're just gonna keep going through. Let me just speed this up here. So let me just add that one, add to CMA, and we'll do yeah, let's say that's it. So let's say, we'll do that one too, CMA. Okay, so we're done. Let's say we've gone through all 17. We looked through all 17. We added the ones we thought were representative of the market that exists for our subject property. So this is a little bit of tricky, another spot of trickiness in the Pinergy CMA, like what do you do next? So let me just tell you that once you've gone through your list and you've added your comparables, it's always a good idea to go back and review what you've added. And maybe you need to go back to your search and just change it slightly. Maybe you're not finding enough comps. You want to go out 2.5 miles, or you want to go back 8 months looking for solds instead of 6, or you want to tighten it up. So if you want to go back and 1, review what you've attached so far, and 2, maybe search again, what you want to do is click on the tab that you're currently on. I know it doesn't make sense, but you're on the comparable properties tab. If you click it again, it'll bring you back to this default screen, which shows you what you've attached. So these are the 4 that I've attached as comparables. And then I've got search MLS if I want to go back and search maybe with different criteria, or search public records. And so that's how you go about finding and adding your comparables. There is a map too, interactive map. So if you check that, probably should be checked anyways, but it's going to show your subject property and the comps that you found, like location, distance, like, how close they are. So you can review that as well. But once you've added all your comparables, you just move on to the next step, which is price adjustments. And don't worry about like if you didn't get something here, because when we talk about the next CMA program, it'll sink in because it works very similar. So price adjustments tab. So let's talk about this. So there's I said earlier that doing adjustments, the idea is that you bring a comparable more in line with the subject property. So there's a lot of different thoughts on price adjustments. I've gone to many different offices doing the CMA, and there seems to be the thought processes are as such. Let me show you like my thought process on this. My thought process is you're not going to find a cookie cutter house, probably not, right? There's going to be some differences. It's almost expected. It's in the same market. It's almost tolerable to have a little bit of some differences. It's not a perfect world, right? So, the way you want to do adjustments that the way I look at it is only if it's really something you can't ignore. It's a major feature. Every other way it's good except for this one thing. And if you could just change that, it would be a perfect comp. That's when you go to price adjustments. So let's say that you did find the perfect comparable, like same builder right across the street, and it sold recently. You're like, there's no way I'm not using this as a comp. It's perfect. But the owner added on a 2-car garage. So you're like, oh, well, it sold more because they added on a 2-car garage. My subject property doesn't have a 2-car garage. If only it didn't have that 2-car garage, it would be a perfect comp. So what you can do in price adjustments is go in, find the property that has the garage, that one we were talking about, and basically adjust the sale price and say, well, if it didn't have the 2-car garage, it probably would have sold for about 25,000, 30,000 less in this particular area. So I'm going to take the sale price. I'm going to take away 30,000. I'm going to pretend the garage doesn't exist. And then when you analyze the properties, it's analyzing the adjusted price. So that's one thought process. Just adjust the major differences. There's another thought process that I kind of alluded to earlier that's like, don't adjust, because it's your estimate of how much something affects the sale price. That's a tough, adjustment to make to get that number. And there's going to be some differences. So, what you can do is present the CMA to your client and then say, look, we found these comparables, and this is the average sales price of the comparables that are similar to your property, but you have an updated kitchen. So we can probably be a little bit above this number. And I was looking at, properties without an updated kitchen, one with, and it seems to adjust the sale price this amount. And so my point is that you're opening up a conversation with your client about the differences, which gives you an opportunity to let them know you know the market as well. And you're not putting down a figure that they might try to like hold you to or put more weight behind. It's just opening up a conversation saying, I think your updated kitchen, you probably could be about, 30, 40,000 more than this average, and the market's pretty hot in this particular area. So, that sort of stuff. I don't know. It's an option. That's one. So you can do major adjustments. You could not do any adjustments and just bring it up as a conversation with the client. There's other offices that I went to where they have like a list of adjustments. They're like, if you're doing a CMA in this area, you adjust $100 per square foot. You adjust $10,000 per bedroom. You adjust $5,000 per bathroom. And there's like this list, and they do every single difference adjustment, and there's like 10 of them. So that's another camp there that thought process on the adjustment. So, but anyways, regardless of whatever you guys decide, here's how you do adjustments, right? So the way you do adjustments in Pinergy CMA is you go to adjustments here. By the way, the pink is the subject property, and next to it's all the comps. But you go to adjustments, you click on pre-fill values for, and then you select what you want to do the adjustment on. So select the field. So mine would be like garage spaces if I thought that was the major difference. So you select garage spaces, and then the system goes and fills in the value for each one. So this does have a garage. Let me click on the MLS number. I mean, right here. I think it's probably a detached garage. So where is the garage in this property? 39 photos. We allow way too many photos. They upped it to 42, and I'm like, why? Why? At a certain point, I think you got to go out to the property, and I can't get through them quick enough. That's the attic. That's the big. Okay, where's the garage? Oh, is that it? Okay. Yeah, well, it's a garage technically, so there, I guess that's it there. Okay, anyways, so let's say we've determined that a garage in this particular area affects the sale price. I don't know, let's say 20,000. I'm not saying that's right. There's some tools you can use to try to figure that out. You could look at, again, you can go into the MLS and look at recently sold properties that are similar, the only difference being a garage, and see how much that affected the sale price, try to get an idea. There's one tool I know of. I know there's a bunch of tools out there, but there's one tool I know of specifically where if you're a Realtor member, we have Realtor members and non-Realtor members, but if you're a Realtor member, you have access to RPR software. And RPR software has this feature where you can bring up a property in RPR, like the subject property, and it will give you an AVM saying, this is what our automated value thinks the property's worth. So let's say it thinks it's worth, I don't know, 300,000 or something. You say, okay, great, AVM, but adjust AVM. Assume they added on a 2-car garage last year and they spent 60,000. And the AVM will be like recalculating, now the value is X amount. So you're like, oh, okay, so this AVM, this automated value model, thinks that a garage in this particular area affects the sale price X amount. So you could kind of use that to kind of get an idea or a ballpark. If you have an appraiser friend, check with them, try to get a rough idea of what a garage affects the sale price of a property in a particular area. But they're tough to do, right? So anyways, I'm gonna say 20,000. So basically we go to comp number 1 because it's the only comp that's different from the subject property, right? Subject property does not have a garage, this does. All the other comps don't have a garage. This is the one that stands out. It's different, we're gonna adjust it. We go to adjustments and we say take away 20,000 because it has this 1-car garage. So take away 20,000 from the sale price of 310. So I put in negative 20,000. These don't need to be adjusted because they're the same. And I hit add. And so the system does the adjustment. It takes the 310, it minuses 20,000, and it now has adjusted value of 290,000. So then when we analyze things, it's going off the 290. So it's pretending it sold for 290. And so it gives you another line and you can just keep going with adjustments. And if the adjustment that you want to make is not a field, like general condition, like, yeah, it's the same amount of bedrooms and square feet, but it's not as upkept as my subject property, there's no field you can select that says condition. It just doesn't exist. But you could still type it in. So you can do manual adjustments and you could say condition good and, and this one's poor. And so you could say, well, if this wasn't poor and it was good, it would have sold for more money. How much more? I don't know. You put in whatever you determined, 40,000, and we'll add that to the sale price. So the only thing that's tricky with adjustments in any program is whether you add or take away from the comp. So the idea is if the comp has something more, you take it away than the subject property. If the comp has something less than the subject property, you add to it. It's just lining it up with the subject property. So yeah, so there you go. You can do like your own adjustment there as well. And then the system, when you're done doing your adjustments, it takes the adjusted value, so 290 plus 355 plus 390 plus 375 divided by 4 gives what's called a indicated value by sales comparison approach of 352,500. So that's the average sales price of our comps after our adjustments. And in addition, it gives you the average days on market, 21.50. And I think the even more important, I think, is days to offer. How long until the offer came in? Not how long was it sitting on the market with an offer? How long until the offer came in? So 9 days, a little over 9 days. So with 9.25, what's that, like 6 o'clock in the morning or something? so yeah, it displays that there. And then when you're done, you just hit save to lock in those adjustments. And you click on the next tab, net sheet. So net sheet's optional as well as price adjustments being optional. But what net sheet does is it takes this average sales price of your comps after adjustments. So this average sales price of our comps. And on the net sheet tab, it creates a range of the market based on a 2.5% swing. So it basically takes this number here from the previous page and goes 2.5% below that number, 2.5% above that number to create a range of the market, because this is an exact science. So this is kind of determining the range. And every CMA program I've run into has the option to put in this range, and it's usually based off of what I just talked about, the average sales price. But like Cloud CMA has that sort of range of the market too, but they don't go off a 2.5% swing, they go off a 3% swing. So sometimes there's a difference in the percentage of the swing. But either way, on both programs, you're in control and you can override. So if you think it should be a 3% swing, because maybe you're not finding enough good comps, so it's not that narrowed in, you could check override and then just do your own calculations and put in a low and high value for the market that exists for the subject property. Now, I might use override, keep the 2.5 in this case, but then like round it because, you know, $343,688 is kind of implying that it's super accurate. So I'm just going to say 340. I'm going to round 344 to 361. And then loan amount is how much they still owe on the property. Say they owe 60,000. Brokerage fee. Now I'm going to put in a silly number because we can't really talk about brokerage fees. So MLS PIN doesn't dictate the fee. And it could be implied if I throw out a number that I'm suggesting a number and all that good stuff. So yeah, I'm just going to put in a silly number like 80. All right. So if I put in 80 for the brokerage fee, I have to tell the system what that 80 means. Does it mean a percent of the sale price? 80% of the sale price is what I'm charging? Or does it mean a dollar on the thousand of sale price? Or does it mean a fixed amount, in which case it's just $80? Or am I doing it out of the kindness of my heart and it's not used? There's no brokerage fee in this calculation. So Title 5, smoke detector inspection, other inspection reports, repairs, attorney fees, miscellaneous, other sellers fees, tax stamps. You can add in something if you need to. That's that for the net sheet. And then just save. And we're done putting in information. So the only thing left to do is just choose what we want to print out. And so I go to the last tab, print/export CMA. And these are all the pages of the CMA that we can include. If there's a checkbox that's checked, that will be included in the final printout. So cover page, do I not want a cover page or do I want a cover page? Let's look at what the cover page looks like to try to determine that. So I'm going to click on the magnifying glass here. It'll just give me a preview. Oh, I got Keller Williams in here. I had that from before, so don't beat me up on this. But yeah, so that's a cover page with the logo in the background. You can customize your logo. I'll show you how to do that. But yeah, so that's a cover page. Let's say we want a cover page. Introduction letter. So this is a letter that's kind of like, it's leading into the CMA. It's kind of personalizing the CMA a little bit. And to create an introduction letter, you actually click on the words introduction letter and you type it out here. I've got this horrible one I typed out before. And you give it a save name so you can use it in a future CMA. Now, Pinergy CMA does not have a default introduction letter. Cloud CMA does have a default introduction letter. So I do like the fact that Cloud includes default. So again, my preference is usually Cloud, but I think this is a no-nonsense CMA. So to understand how a CMA works, I think this is a little bit better. And Pinergy CMA does have some strengths over Cloud CMA. For one, just to kind of quickly go over a couple, the subject property information, remember how you can create an offline listing and say, this is the subject property, or you can choose an MLS number and say, this is the subject property. Cloud CMA, you enter in your subject property information and it fills in like, I don't know, 6 or 8 fields on the subject property from public records, and that's that. You have no other control. Like it's pretty much, these are the fields, they're limited. We're getting the information on the subject property from the public record, and that's that. So that's one difference. And there's a couple other differences too. Maybe I'll point them out as we go through, but that's one major difference. So anyways, this is the introduction letter. I just type it out, I can hit save, and then I can preview what that's gonna look like by clicking on the magnifying glass for the introduction letter. And it's gonna put the date in, the client's name, the client's address if you provided it, dear first name, last name of the client, and then what you typed in for your introduction letter. So table of contents, if you want that, check that. Agent resume, so an About You page, you can create that by clicking on the words agent resume, same way you created the introduction letter, and then you can include an agent resume. Which brings us to subject property. So this is where we're going to print out the subject property in the CMA. And there's a kind of a sub option. So you got, yes, print out the subject property. That'd be kind of a given, I think. Do we want a regular or short format? Doesn't really matter. The only difference, they both take up one page at least. The regular includes pretty much everything that would be in a public report. The short excludes like the room. So if the list agent provided the like the room level and dimensions and features, that would not be in the printout of the subject property if you chose the short format. But whatever, it's not that big a deal. So I'm just going to choose regular and subject property. And so if I click on the magnifying glass, it's going to print out the subject property details. And you know, if you use the offline listing as the subject property, that would be cool because it would be a good time to maybe when you're presenting the CMA, just verify that this is all good too, like what you filled in so far in the subject property, so they can see that information maybe. Okay, now we need to print out our comparables. So in the CMA, we print out their information, we print out the similar properties to theirs, and then we kind of analyze. So we're going to print out the comparable properties. So there's three ways to print them out. So it's this way here, this one. There's this option, and there's this option. So three different ways to print out the comps. Ignore market analysis for a moment. So this option will give each comp its own page. So I could say, yes, when it prints out, each comp gets its own page in the regular format. Great. But I could also do this, which is a side-by-side property comparison. So this is going to put three comps on one page in a spreadsheet view. But even better than that would be the last option, which is a spreadsheet view, but it includes a subject property on each page. So if I bring that up, I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's going to have the subject property, and then next to it, comp one, comp two, and then on the next page, subject property again, comp three, comp four, so that the client can contrast the differences and similarities between their property and the comparables. So it's a great view. And every CMA program I've run across has these two variations. Do you want to print out each comp on its own page, or do you want to do a spreadsheet view? And one of the advantages to Pinergies is you can do both. You can say, look, I want each comp to get its own page if we need to reference information. I guess maybe. I don't know if there's really a reason to do both, but I guess you could. Each comp gets its own page, and then we also do the spreadsheet view as well. So print out both. Where with Cloud, you get to choose. You can do one or the other, but you can't do both. I don't know if it's a big deal, but that's a difference. Anyways, so yeah, so print those out. This market analysis is just a quick little market report. I mean, it's definitely cool to look at. Let's take a look. But it's doing like a kind of a little quick market report on your comps. So it's saying the number of comparables for. Here's the price range of your comparables. Here's the average price of your comparables. Here's the median price of your comparables. Here's each comp listed out with some basic information: bedrooms, bathrooms, living area, days on market, and then kind of important, I think, a list price sale price ratio. So in 35 days, they got 98% of the last asking price. Let me be clear, that's the last asking price. LP is list price or last price. This one got 103% after being on the market 19 days of their last asking price, 103% and 111%. So that's a quick little market analysis on the comps. The sold properties graph is basically the market analysis with a bar graph. It's not that impressive, honestly. It's not bad. It's just, it's basically marking out the list price and sale price for each comp in a bar graph, and then giving a little information on each comp individually. So it's very similar to the market analysis summary, except it's got some graphs in there. When it comes to graphs, Cloud CMA excels. They've got some really great looking graphs there. Pricing. All right, so here's kind of the reason for the CMA. So this option here, pricing adjustments per property appraisal style. If we click on the magnifying glass, that's going to be the price adjustments tab that we worked on, basically printed out. So if you did adjustments, you definitely want to print this out. It's going to show the adjustments, how much you adjusted for, and then probably going to circle down below and say, look, property similar to yours, it's sold within the last 6 months, 352,500. After I've done my adjustments for the differences, like the garage spaces. The average days on market is 21.50. So that's educating them on just taking the average price of similar properties after adjustments. This analysis, though, kind of breaks away from that. This doesn't care about your adjustments. It ignores your adjustments, and it goes off just price per square foot. So it's a simplified analysis. So let's bring it up, but there's some sub options. So select statuses. So you might have on market comps, you might have sold comps, and saying, well, this analysis, where do you want this analysis applied? To your solds, to your on market comps, to all of them? I'm going to leave it to all of them, even though I only have sold, so it's only going to apply to solds. So I'm just going to leave the statuses selected. Now, do I want to use a median calculation for the price per square foot or average? Look, agents wanted median as an option, and I get it. Median has its place, but I don't think on price per square foot, and I don't think it really has much of a place in CMAs, because the idea with a median calculation is if you have a spike, it handles a spike in the data better than an average would. So if you've got a comp that's 100,000, 100,000, 100,000, 1 million, 100,000, whatever, the median price is gonna be 100,000. It's gonna completely ignore that $1 million property. So the median would work in that case, but you'd never have that because you handpicked each one of your comps, and you want each one of your comps to weigh in equally. So you'd switch probably an average price per square foot. But anyways, the average is the way I would go. And if I hit the magnifying glass, let's break this apart, this analysis. So we know it's a dollar per square foot analysis. So we need to figure out what are our comps selling for per square foot. And it's done that calculation. It's 183. So the comps we selected on average are selling for $183 per square foot. It doesn't care about adjustments, so it's not taking those into consideration. So 183. So if we take the 183 and times it by the square footage of our subject property, which is right here, so our subject property is 1,966 square feet, and we times that by 183, which is the average sales price per square foot of our comps, we get a predicted price of your home based on cost per square foot of $359,778. So that's the price per square foot analysis. And then estimated net proceeds of sale. So if you are going to use a net sheet, if you decide you're going to use a net sheet, I would highly recommend Pinergy's net sheet is better than Cloud's net sheet by far for a couple reasons. But let me bring up the net sheet. So what Pinergy's net sheet does is it says, here's the low side of the market, here's the high side of the market. So this is based on a 2.5% swing of the average sales price of our comparables after adjustments. So that's sort of the market range we're anticipating. So maybe if things go kind of not that great, maybe you sell for 344, maybe you owe 60,000, so you're left with 284, and then you got to pay all the fees here associated with selling your house, which total 3,219 on the low side. Anyways, you're left over with 280,000, 281,000 roughly if your property sells on the low side of the market. If your property sells on the high side of the market, though, you know, we're looking at about 297, 298. So this is giving the low and the high. But oddly enough, in Cloud CMA, when you do the net sheet, it does it on the low only. It's like, here's your worst case scenario. Doesn't touch if things go well, which I thought was, and when we were doing the net sheet in Pinergy, we could put in like a brokerage fee as a percent, for example, or whatever we wanted as a percent. Cloud CMA, you have to put in a fixed dollar amount for each particular fee, which is weird again, because I'm not sure that's always the case. So anyways, Cloud CMA's got a lot going for it, but the net sheet's not one of those. But if you don't do net sheets, then you got nothing to worry about either way. You can just uncheck and say, I don't want a net sheet. So, and then when you're done, you can just hit PDF is what I recommend, which will generate a PDF of the completed CMA. And then you could send this off to your client. But I'll show you how to change the logos and such. So Pinergy CMA can only really generate a PDF. Cloud CMA has an advantage, huge advantage. In regards to Cloud CMA, will do a PDF of your completed CMA, but that's only one way to present the CMA. Built into Cloud CMA is an actual live presentation. So if you're going to use Zoom or Teams or something, it's got a format that's been developed just for live presentations of CMAs. So you can have your PDF, but then you can say, I want to live present this. And additional to that, even, they have something called a slideshow presentation, which is meant to gear towards if you're presenting to like a group of people on like a projection screen in person. It's a slide-based, like a PowerPoint, if you will. It's not PowerPoint, but it's like that sort of slide-based presentation format. So how you present, Cloud CMA gives you 3 different ways to present your CMA, where Pinergy's is just like, here's your standard PDF. So definitely a huge advantage for Cloud CMA. But wrapping up with Pinergy CMA, if you want to set up your company colors and logos, you just click on CMA options and settings. And where it says import theme, colors, and logos, if you click on that, you can choose your company if it's listed here. If it's not listed here, you can choose officer, manager's shared theme, or your broker's name will appear in the dropdown if they set up a theme for the office. And the broker would go in here, set up all the colors and logos manually, and then check this box saying allow others in my office to use this theme. So if that's been done, you'll have the option. So anyways, but you can also just quickly switch it to whatever you want. All right. So how do we do? That's Pinergy's CMA, extremely quick. Normally it's like an hour for each one. So I'm kind of just, I don't know if you're going to be doing Pinergy's CMA over Cloud CMA in all honesty. So, but I think you can get an idea how CMAs work from Pinergy's very well, because it's sort of focused on just the data. But we'll get into Cloud CMA next if there's no questions on Pinergy's CMA. All right. So let's jump over to Cloud. I did want to tell you now, the first time you use Cloud CMA, since we've partnered with them, you have to register on their systems. You have to create an account. It doesn't cost. But the first time you try to access Cloud CMA by clicking on Cloud CMA up top, you'll get a screen that looks like, and this is probably forwarded to you too, but it's going to look like this. I would do it, but I've already registered almost all of my accounts. And the last account I didn't register, I did to get these screenshots. So, but you get this. So all it wants is your name and your email and to agree to the terms of service and hit activate, and you're good to go. That's as easy as it gets. That will prompt on your screen, fill that in if you want to use Cloud CMA, there's no cost, hit activate, and away you go. As a matter of fact, the second screen you'll get would look like this, which is a little confusing because it's got a bunch of stuff on it, but you can just click on Cloud CMA launch right here. That's fine. These are kind of pay things. So they're just trying to sell you stuff, but this would launch it and you're all set. So anyways, let's go back into Pinergy and we'll click on Cloud CMA here and that'll send me into Cloud CMA. Now Cloud CMA is really good. I praise Cloud CMA a lot and it deserves it because I'm usually I'm not one of those like marketing, like happy, joy on every product. So Cloud CMA deserves a lot of credit. They really have a great product because not only does it do CMAs, but it does tons of other stuff. Like, for example, there's a buyer's tour where if you're going to look at a few properties with your clients, you can basically do this presentation that has the data on the properties you're looking at, a map of all the properties. I think you can even do like area restaurant reviews and stuff, and you can give that to your client. And as you go through the properties, they can like look at all the information. They can take notes on this presentation you give them. So it's called a buyer's tour. So you give this to your client before you go look at a few properties. And so that's cool. You can also just print out like a general property report. Like maybe you don't like the format in Pinergy. Like the public report, you're like, yeah, it's got the data, but it doesn't look that presentable. Maybe you like Cloud's way that it presents the data on a particular property. So you can just do up a property report and send it to one of your clients. You can do a one-page flyer. So if you have your property on the market and you're doing an open house and you want to hand out a flyer as people come in with information on the property, you can do a one-page flyer just by clicking on flyer and get that going. And then the last one, since we're kind of going through them all, is HomeBeat. Now this one's a pay option, so I don't have a ton of data, but roughly what it does is this. You have a client that's thinking of selling their house, but they're kind of keeping an eye on the market and they want to determine when's a good time. So they want, what this is going to do, HomeBeat, is it will send them like a light CMA automatically, like every week, every month or something. And so they're getting updates on what the market looks like for the property automatically every month. So they might see and think, it looks like a good time, let's list. So somebody that's kind of on the fence, you can use HomeBeat, but that's a pay option. So just these other ones are not. So just heads up on HomeBeat. Okay, so let's get started. So anyways, CMA, so click on CMA up top, and then I click on this create CMA report. So click right here, create CMA. So instead of having tabs like we did in Pinergy, this has steps. I don't know, what do they call it, breadcrumb trail thing, whatever this is. But criteria is a step. And on criteria, we fill in information on the subject property, our client, and then on listings, we find comps, right? And then we customize, like how do we want to print out, like what pages we want, what order, and then we basically just save it. So subject property, owner information, comp, well, how do we want to print out, like what pages, what order, and then publish, like create, save, that sort of thing. And this isn't even a step, it's a button. So it's really easy. Okay, so criteria step. Name the report. It wants you to name the report the client's name. So fine. Okay, so client's name's Jason Rose. Notes, just like before, you can type in notes. They don't print out. Nobody sees it but you. Just type in notes if you want. Which brings me to subject property. So this is interesting because this doesn't really give you any options. It's not horrible. It's not great. It's okay. They're going to be using the public tax and assessment records database. So as you start to type in your subject property's address, like 7 Reeves Street, it's going to just immediately start checking to find a match in the public tax and assessment records, not the MLS. So I can go here and say 7 Reeves, and it's already starting to find matches. And I'm like, oh, it's in Worcester, that's the property. So when I click on that, it goes to the public tax and assessment records and it fills in the information it got from the public tax and assessment records. And it's wrong. At least that listing said the square foot was 1966. This is saying 1764. We'll probably have to figure out why there's a discrepancy, but let's say it's 1966. You can simply take the public record information, backspace it out, and then just say it's 1966. So I guess that's cool. You're not stuck with the public record information. But yeah, then property type residential. Apparently it doesn't know the subtype, but okay, it's single family. So single family residence. And then I can go to advanced information, which I don't know why they call it advanced. It's just some additional fields. So square feet, year built, taxes, garages, area, subdivision style. So fill in whatever you can. And then I would highly recommend that you upload a picture of the subject property. It allows you to kind of personalize the CMA, right? Like you didn't just automate this. You spent a lot of time on this. You went out and took a picture of their property, that sort of stuff. It could just look like you've done a little bit more work. So add cover photo if you have a picture of the subject property. So that's cool. If you don't upload a picture of the subject property, the system will default to a satellite view of the area. All right, so moving on, how do you want to get comparative listings? So this is interesting because basically Cloud will try to find comps for you if you want it to. Now, they are admitting it's not great because it's called the quick and dirty search. So their name is giving away their confidence in this particular search. I kind of agree. It's gotten better, but it's still not that great. So your options are this. There's a choice here. Do you want to just paste in a bunch of MLS numbers that are not any MLS numbers? You could, if you already went, this is what I'd recommend. You go into Pinergy before you start your Cloud CMA, you go to search and you find your comps. So find some solds that are similar to your subject property, find some on markets that are similar to the subject property. And you basically either write down the MLS numbers or put them into a cart or whatever you need to get all those MLS numbers together. And then you go into Cloud CMA and you paste in the MLS numbers and you say, those are my comps. I already did the work ahead of time. Let's just move on. And that'll save you a lot of time. Well, I guess if you've done it in Pinergy. So anyways, yeah, so there you go. So that's the best option, right? Because why not go to the source of the listing data to find comps? Why use a third party, which is grabbing the information from us? It's almost like the phone game, it can get not as accurate. You want to go to the source. But anyways, for time constraints, right? That's my excuse today. For time constraints, we are going to use the quick and dirty because it is quick. And yeah, we're going to try it out. So I'm going to tell Cloud to try to find me some comps. So I'm going to say automatically find listings near the subject property. So right away, I know this is a location-based search. It takes the subject property address, it goes out, I think, a mile and tries to find however many you told it to find. So I said, find me 10 comps. So it goes out a mile, it goes, oh, well, we only found 2. So it goes out another mile and then another mile and another mile until it finds however many I told it to find. So I told it to find me 10. I'm going to say go back 6 months, find me 10 listings, 10 potential comparables. And here's some criteria to apply to that distance search. Find me something with 3 to 4 bedrooms. Find me something with 1,800 to 2,200 square feet. I'm not going to put in BAS lot size. List price, the CMA is trying to determine a list price. So if you force it to find what you think, then it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cheating, right? So you want the data to back up what you already thought. You don't want to force the system to back up what you think, like forcing it, right? That's not probably the way to go. There's a word for that, but I don't know what it is. Anyways, you might use list price though if you don't want to find like fixer-upper properties. So, I could put in a low starting price because I don't want to find fixer-uppers. So maybe use it for that reason. But I'm going to leave it alone. Leave that empty. And that's it. So find me 10 comparables, go back 6 months for like solds off markets, and here's some criteria to apply to that search, and let's do it. So if you're looking to go to the next step, you just look for, this is a good interface, you just look for the big green button. There's one here, there's one down here, and what it does is it will go to the next step. So it's just going to find those comparables. And you'll see the polish in Cloud right away because there's a really nice map that comes up what it found. So there we go. It's tough to see the subject property. Let me zoom in a little bit on this map. So if I zoom into this map, the little house is our subject property. And the green comps are the on-market comps that it found. So it found one on market comp. It looks like it found one under agreement or contingent comp. And then it found a bunch of solds. The gray tags that we're seeing here, whatever these are, those are ones that it found that it did not select. So that's what I found. But it selected one active, so that's right there. It selected one active under contract, so that's contingent. So here's contingent listing it found. And then it selected 8 solds, which is quite a bit. But that's what it found, and that's what it selected. So now we're not stuck with any of that, though. So if we look down below, here's a list of each comparable that it found. If the checkbox is checked, it selected it as an actual comp. You can override though. Let's say this 13 Ashwood Street that it selected as a comp and it's sold. I can click on details here. See where it says details and adjustments, and that will expand that and give me all the information on that property. So I can look this over and go, you know what? Just hypothetically, I don't agree. I don't think this is a good comparable. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to uncheck it. And now we have, instead of 8 sold, we have 7 solds. I'm going to click on details and adjustments to kind of zip that information up. And I'm going to look at the next one, 24, is it Marion Ave? So I'm going to click on details and adjustments, look this one over, same sort of thing. Is this a good comp or not? If it is, leave it checked. If not, uncheck it. And if we look down, there's ones that it found, like here, found an active under contract and it did not select it. Don't know why, but it didn't. I can look that over and see if that works. It found quite a few active under contracts that it did not select. It only found one active though. It found one withdrawn. It didn't select that probably because it's withdrawn. But yeah, and you can, things you can do here, you can move your comps around, and I think this will change the order in which they're printed out. So if you're concerned about the order that the system prints out your comps in, you can say, I want this one to print first. I'm going to move it up top. So I believe that's what it does. I haven't verified that, but I think that's what it does. We'll check it out. So you can move them around. There's got to be a reason for it. That's got to be it. You can add a listing. So this is nice. Let's say that, you had Cloud try to find comps, but on your own, or maybe you're talking to the client and they mentioned a house just down the road that's sold that's similar to theirs, and you're like, that's interesting, Cloud didn't find it. But you find it in MLS PIN and you got the MLS number. You can just say manually add a listing to this group and then fill in the MLS number and say add listing, and that will just add it in. So you can add in your own. The other thing you can do is public records. Once again, we saw that in Pinergy CMA that you can search public records and add those as comps. Same thing here. You can just enter in an address, basically say add listing. When you enter in the address, it'll find the public record, and then you can just hit add listing and add it in as a comp. So there's a manual. I want to add a comp myself, either based on MLS number or a public record. So that's the add a listing at the bottom. You can adjust comparables, just like we saw adjustments before. It's not as nice, I guess, but it's just as effective. It's kind of the way it implements it. Like, I would say it's easier to build Pinergy CMA, but the presentation on Cloud's so much better. You almost got to go through all this trouble. But if you want to do an adjustment, you got to go, okay, same sort of thing. Let's say you'd have to look at all the comps and say, okay, this one's got an extra garage, but it's not easy to know that because it doesn't give you this nice like layout or spreadsheet view of your comps to figure out what's different from the subject properties. You almost got to go through each one to figure it out. But let's say I figured out that it's a garage space issue again. I've got this one property that has this 2-car garage. My subject doesn't, and most of the other comps don't. I want to use it. I need to kind of adjust for that. So you go to details and adjustments right here. You go down to where it says adjustment name, and you same sort of thing, garage spaces, and then take away 20,000 because it has like a 2-car garage and our subject doesn't, let's say. So I put a -20 and hit save, and it took the sale price of $325. It took away the 20,000, and now it's an adjusted of 305,000. So, same thing, just the way it's implemented is a little bit like you're on your own kind of thing, but that's how adjustments works in Cloud. And so you can do that for each property. Go down to adjustments, type in the adjustment name and the value, how much you want to adjust, positive or negative, in this case, the sale price, because these are sold comps. So, all right, so we've done that. We've talked about details. We talked about adjustments. We talked about adding a listing. We talked about selecting and unselecting comps. Let's get to the purple area, because this is the suggested list price. So this is you looking over the data and saying, here's what I'm seeing. So that's an important part of any CMA, is your take on the data, what you're seeing in the market. You're going to present that to your client. So this is the sort of suggested list price, I guess, the way to put it. And so you type it in here. But Cloud does something good here. It gives you a bunch of calculations that you can use to help you with suggested list price. So you want to expand the purple area so you can see the price guide, because that helps with the suggested list price, I feel. So I'm going to click on price guide in NetSheet, and this is the price guide here. So this is all the price guide. And so what it's doing is it's saying, okay, here's your sold comps. There's the low price, the median, the average. There's the high price. Here's the average price per square foot. And here's a swing. So you can use any of these numbers. Let's say I want to take the average of my sold comps as my suggested list price. Let's just say hypothetically I want to start there. I can just go with the average and click on it, and it puts it in for me. And then I can always change this number. So I could say, yeah, but everything on the market is 474, so it's definitely gone up. So we probably can go up this number a little bit, and you can make adjustments that way. So you can click on any of these numbers. This system also does that range. So it's not a suggested list price, but a suggested list price range. So suggested range is the same thing we saw in Pinergy. It figures out that our comps are selling for $173 per square foot. So if we take the 173, we times it by the square footage of the subject property, 1,966, we get a value. We get an average price per square foot of our comps. But then we apply that to the subject property. That gives us a value. And then instead of going 2.5% below and above to create a range of the market, this uses, as indicated here, a plus minus 3% swing. So yeah, so they're doing a 3% swing. So that's the 329,914 to 350,322. So I can click on that, and then if I want to change the numbers to do rounding, I could do that. So I could say let's do 3, was it 30 to 350? So we could do that. Anyway, so you can put in whatever you want here, is I guess what I'm getting to, but the price guide can help you out. Which brings up the net sheet. This is a bad implementation of the net sheet, I feel. So you'd put in like smoke detector fee, $50, which is fine, that's 50, but other things aren't going to be a fixed dollar amount. And like I said, when it presents the net sheet, it only does it on the low side for some reason, no idea why. So you could put in all your fees here. There's another line, you type in your next one, and that'd be your net sheet. So that's their implementation of the net sheet. So that's everything here. So we just go and click on the green button, so customize report. And this is where Cloud really shines, because not only does it have like the basic pages you'd expect in a CMA, like suggested list price, average sales price or comps, print out of the comps, cover letter, all that stuff, it's got even more. So let's go through some of the pages that you get access to. But before we do that really quickly, these are the pages. So these are all the pages. If you don't want a page, let's say I don't want a cover letter, you can just hit minus, gets rid of it. If you want the cover letter to be like further down in your CMA, you can click and drag it and let go. So place it wherever you want. If a page can be edited, is that a word? If you can edit a page, you click on edit, like the cover letter. It does have a default. This is actually the default that comes up. So they do have a cover letter already done up. Update date is code that tells it when it actually prints out to put in today's date. And then dear %, title %, puts in your client's name when it goes to print out. So these are like codes to tell the system to do that. But it says, I appreciate the opportunity to share my business plan with you. In order to inform you about the current happenings in today's market, I've prepared this comparative market analysis especially for you. Yeah, I love that wording. There are many properties on the market today, and each has different amenities, sizes, and values, blah, 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 blah. So this is the cover letter, and you can make changes to it, and you can hit save. But what's good is it gives you a default, something to work with. So we'll close out of that. Some pages you can't edit, like what is a CMA is already done up. You can't make changes to it. But if you want to see just what that looks like, you just click on the name, what is a CMA? It'll give you a preview of just that page. So this is what is a CMA, how are CMAs created, how accurate are CMAs. Now, what if your client, this is like an educational page. Now, this is not in Pinergy's CMA. There's no way to educate your client on what is a CMA, how to prepare your home to sell, why you need a real estate agent. Those are educational pages. They're not included in Pinergy's, they are in Cloud, so it's got that huge advantage. But let's say your client isn't really confused on what a CMA is, but more so on the difference between a CMA and an appraisal. Well, so let's say that's the case. Let's get rid of what is a CMA. So I'll hit minus, and then let me see if that page is already in here. So there's a page called CMA versus appraisal. It's not in here, so I got to add it in. So if you want to add a page in, you go to standard. So see standard, these are all pages that you can add in. Now, Power Pack pages are pages you can add in that cost. There's like I think it's a one-time fee of $199 to get access to I think the Power Pack, Tom Ferry pages, if I'm not mistaken, and certain cover letters, but everything in standard is included. So in here is, I think it's guidance. Yeah, so under the guidance subsection of standard is CMA versus appraisals. And so I'm gonna click on that and hit plus to add that into the pages. So add that in, I think it added it down below. I'm gonna drag that up top, click and drag. So there, CMA versus appraisal. So I'll click on that, and that's already done up explaining the difference between CMA versus appraisal. Establishing a home's market value is equally important to buyers, sellers, lenders, and real estate professionals, blah, blah, blah. A real estate professional may prepare a comparative market analysis for the seller to help them establish a listing price. So it's letting them know the market. They can decide where they want to be in that market. The CMA includes recently sold homes and homes for sale in the seller's neighborhood. Although the CMA is used to help determine current market value, it does not establish the seller's home value, because banks want like the value of the house on the books, right? This is different. Although CMA is used to help determine the current market value, it does not establish the seller's home value. The CMA is merely a guide to help the seller learn what's happening in their local market. So it's educating them on the market so they can figure out where they want to be. So they can better understand where their home fits in terms of estimated listing price based on location, features, and conditions. So unlike CMA, a bank appraisal is a professional determination of a home's value. Hey, I take offense to that. The appraisal is completed by a licensed appraiser using guidelines established. Yeah. I mean, they make a point, I guess. A CMA has no rules. You can add 100 comps, you can add 2 comps. The comps could be sold 10 years ago, they could be current. Now, you wouldn't do that, but There's no like established, you have to follow these guidelines on a CMA, where an appraisal, yes, right? They've got strict guidelines. I guess that's another difference. Anyway, so yeah, that's a page, educational page. There's other educational pages like why you need a real estate professional. Now, you know why. The client might be thinking, should I sell the house myself? I don't know. But we can put in a page that would help that out. Let's find it. It's called Why You Need a Real Estate Professional. Already done up. Let's take a look at it. What's cool about this is it's not just all marketing. If you click on it, it basically says that according to the National Association of Realtors 2019 profile of home buyers and sellers, only 8% of the home sales were accomplished as for sale by owners. And of those 8%, 77% knew their buyers personally. For sale by owner, home sales had a median price of $200,000. So for sale by owners, $200,000 median, where the agent assisted home sale median was $280,000. And it's letting them know that, that you guys are trained, licensed professionals. You have experience in the neighborhood and the market. That's a big plus, right? You have oversight from brokers and state licensing officials. Your job is to advise them the best way to reach their goals, and on and on. So that's one educational page you can add in that could be useful. Now, the Power Pack pages has something similar called 10 jobs for your real estate professional. And you can view it if you click on it. This one's kind of cool because it says jobs your agent will happily do. The CMA, listing your home, sales strategy, communication, marketing, showing, negotiations, contracts. This is all pretty cool. This is a pay option though. So if you hit plus, it'll give this video and then you can say try for free. And I think it's $199.95 one-time fee. So Power Pack pages do cost. What other educational pages do we have? I think that's like enough, but there's tons in here, like how to prepare your home to moving checklist, showing open house checklist. Oh, this one's interesting. Intelligent pricing and timing. Now, I'm not saying this is the case now. The market's kind of hot, right? But let's say you have a client that's, you present the CMA to them and they go, I know I'm going to ask a lot. I'm way above what you saying the comps are reflecting, but you know what? I can always lower the price. So I'm going to ask a lot and I'm okay with that. And you're like, oh, well, there's some downsides to that, maybe, but just be mindful. There's a page called Intelligent Pricing and Timing that explains that the first 2 weeks are crucial. The best chance of selling your home is in the first 2 weeks of marketing. Your home is fresh and exciting to buyers and their agents with a sign in the yard, full description and photos in the local multiple listing service. So it's basically saying the first 2 weeks are crucial. Fair market value attracts buyers, overpricing never does. I mean, there's certain buyers set up in the system where they're only sent homes that are max is, I don't know, 600,000 and they're listing the 610. That potential buyer is simply never going to see the property. So that could educating them on that would be helpful. So that's intelligent pricing and timing. There's also integration, third-party integration pages. For example, let's say somebody went online and they got a Zestimate and you know that Zestimate's high. You're like, that's really high. There's something off of that Zestimate. So there's a page you can add in here that is kind of interesting. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's called Online Valuation. Yeah, Online Valuation Analysis. So this comes from, uses Zillow data. So I'll hit plus. Somewhere in here we'll find Online Valuation. So we click on that. So it basically takes your comps. So there's your sold comps. And it says this comp here, we selected, it sold for $395,000. Now the Zestimate was $398,200. So it was actually pretty accurate. This one was off 3.3% from the Zestimate. This was off 4.8. This was off 10.4. So on average, they're off 10.4% or $30,000 between what the Zestimate is and what they actually sell for. So this could be helpful in presenting, saying the Zestimate's not 100% accurate. It could be off. And in this case, with our comps, it's off as this much. So maybe that's a page you want to do, but that's an example of third-party integration using Zillow. And then we also have integration with Zillow again under testimonials. So you can say, I want a page done up with clients I've worked with in the past that have left me feedback, and I want to grab that data from Zillow, for example. So I can hit plus to add that page and it will ask for my Zillow screen name or email so I can grab that information and create a presentable page with clients' feedback. So people can feel comfortable working with me, you could do that, but you don't have to use Zillow. If you use Real Satisfied, for example, which is another example of software that captures client feedback, I think Real Satisfied works by, they grab our data in the sense that they can detect a transaction, like a sale transaction, and then they can email the agent, the list agent, saying, do you want us to forward to your client a questionnaire on how you did? And then Real Satisfied will capture that and allow you to integrate that into Facebook and whatever the different websites and everything. So that's another piece of software that captures a client feedback. But whatever you want to use, is a bunch of examples here. Rated agent, reach 150, testimonial tree. Yeah, so you just choose if you want that. But that's an integration page. And then of course there's your standard pages, like analysis pages of your comparables. Like for example, listings here. This is where it prints out each comp, and details is where it prints out the details of each comp. But basically it prints out the first comp with the details, the photos and adjustments, and it goes up to the top, prints out the next comp, next comp, next comp. The format that it prints out your comps, the format that it uses to print out your comps, that's set up top where it says layout. And if I click on layout, it's the same thing we saw in Pinergy CMA. Really, there's only two options. There's variations of those options, but there's two options. There's photo with max data, which is give each comp its own page, or there's spreadsheet view, where it puts the subject property and then 3 comps next to it. How do you want to print out your comps when you print out your CMA? I'm going to choose the 4-column comparison. And then if I go down to where it actually prints out the comps in the CMA, I can click on details. And there we go, spreadsheet view. Subject property, comp 1, comp 2, comp 3. Subject property, comp 3, right? Oh no, that's still the same one, just more data. But anyways, it would print out all the comps in this format. Okay, comparable property statistics. This is sort of analysis, sold property analysis. I'll just bring that up for an example. Averages, homes sold for an average 103% of the list price. 19 days on market's the average, and it gives some information on each individual comp. So we get that. Our suggested list price is a huge page. So let's find that one. Where is that one? Suggested list price should be in here somewhere. Suggested list price. I might want to wrap up with that. So I might say, look, looking at all this data, this is what I'm seeing. So I'm going to bring up the suggested list price, and I'm looking at somewhere between 330 and 350,000 based on the comps that we found. So about $167 per square foot to $178 per square foot. So that's my suggested list price range. But it does do some calculations below. It says for our sold comparables, the average was 340,571. But if you take my adjustments into consideration, we're looking at 337,714. So this is all calculated for each grouping of comps, and on and on and on. There's tons and tons of pages. But if you don't want a page, again, just hit the minus, get rid of it. If you want to add a page in, find something under standard that you want to add and hit plus. If you want to move the pages around, just click and drag and move them around. If you can make changes or edit a page, click on edit. If it has no edit, you can't make changes. The only thing left to do is maybe save this. So you can go to template, because you spent a lot of time choosing the pages you wanted in the order you want. You can now click on template, save as template, and type in a name so you don't have to go through this again for future CMA. Be like, this is the layout I start with, so load this in. So you can save your order and everything like that. Company colors, you just click on theme, and you click on the drop-down and you choose your company colors. If your company colors are not here, you can look for your company name. And if your office has set up a theme with Cloud CMA, I believe that does cost, the office name would simply appear here, and you could choose that. So you could choose whatever colors represent your company, lock that in, and you're good. There's a font, which, text, it's not much for options, I don't think. Like, what sort of text do you want? Oh, they've added to it. Okay, take that back. So you can change the font, and the cover page, which is really nice, is unfortunately a pay option. So this is where it's going to give some really presentation pages, like cover pages here. So if you click on one of those, it brings up the video again, try for free. So you could do the whole $199.95, but you get to try it out for 14 days before you have to pay that if you want to. But that's a pay option. One thing I didn't look at is the title page. This is the first page it prints out. And if you uploaded a picture of the subject property, it would be the picture you took, but now it just is a satellite view. So that's what it defaults to. And it says the address of the property, prepared for Jason, and the date, because the date really matters. Yeah, and that's all the pages. So once you're done doing all of that, you just hit publish report. And so now it's actually creating the report, and it creates this little place card here, and it gives you the next step, you can make a flyer for your property. So if you're going to do an open house, you can make a flyer to hand out. And it's saying, do you want to email the CMA? But I would just do this, just hit back to CMAs, because I'm more familiar with this format than what it's throwing up right there. So this is the CMA section of Cloud CMA, and this is the saved CMA that we did. If you move over to the little eyeball, it tells you view count, last viewed, last updated. So that's kind of useful. You can do view PDF, which brings up the completed PDF that you get on any CMA program, right? PDF, here it is completed. You could email this to your client. So if you want to email it out, you would click on the 3 dots, and you'd say email report. And then what's interesting is it wants to email. It's not interesting, right? So it's going to go to this person. So subject properties in there, intro, your comparative market analysis report is ready. And then it's going to give them in the email a link to the PDF, slideshow, or live report. So there's 3 ways to present the CMA. I'm going to do just PDF and hit send, and that would send it out. So if you just want to email it, just do the PDF link and you're good to go. But there's other ways to present this data. We talked about the standard PDF, but what makes this stand out, Cloud CMA, is you can do a live presentation. And this has been formatted just for live presentations. The downside is that it doesn't take your page layouts into consideration that you worked on. Like, remember, we were moving pages around, adding pages in. That was just for the PDF version. If you want to do the live version, it can be customized, but it starts with its own sort of format. So this is creating the live presentation. And when this is the live presentation, if you click on the 3 lines in the upper left, like the hamburger menu, this shows you the pages of the live presentation. And you can click on customize, and you can hide pages or bring pages in. You can change the order by clicking and dragging. So you do have some control. It just doesn't take your layout for the PDF into the live presentation. So, but the way this works is you see where it says start a virtual meeting, and you can choose whatever software you're using and hit start. And then you can then present by clicking on, let's say, agent resume, the first page. That comes up. You can then click on this little draw icon and draw and point things out to them, and then hit the X to clear that out. And then just simply go to the next page. Here's what is a CMA. And you can see here that tall houses sell for more. So your house is very tall, very good. Our company, what is an MLS? So we got these pages. But anyways, we get to the comps. This is where it's interesting on the live presentation. You can make changes to your CMA while you're presenting it. Let's say they're arguing with you on one of these comps. So like, that's not even close to my property. Like, all right, we can get rid of it. We can look at the numbers afterwards. So if you want to get rid of a comp, you can simply just click on it. I think we just click, let's say we want to get rid of this one, click on it. And then see where it says include comp? I can just say toggle that off. Don't include that one, gone. Let's go back. 24 Marion Ave is gone. So you can do that. And you can even add properties in on the fly. So I can say, they're saying, well, there's a house a couple of streets over that's sold. It's very similar to mine. I'm not seeing that here. And you're like, oof, I missed that one, but let's add it in. We can add it in. Let's talk about it. So I'm going to click on maps. This brings up a map of their property in the comps, which is a great looking map. Again, the polish, the presentation's great here. So there's, their property, the on-market comp, the sold comps, and then the contingent comp. But I want to add a comp into this. Well, if you click zoom to see more listings, it'll zoom into a certain level that will show you everything. So see all these potential comparables? So I can just go, oh, this one you're talking about over here that's sold. Okay, let me click on that. And like, yeah, that's the one. And I'm like, okay, include comp. And now that's added in as a comparable. So we got compare, which just brings up the spreadsheet view of their property and the comps. We have the map for the overview, and if you want to add properties in. And there's also a general stats view as well. So we can see that, tons and tons of data. Closed, pending, active, and you can circle, which is good. And then you can move on to average price, average pricing, average price per square foot. I don't even know what this chart does, to be honest. I've been trying to figure out for days. This one's a too over my head. I like simple. They've gone a little too far with this one. So you guys can figure it out. Maybe it's just me, but lots of polished charts. What they mean, I don't know. Online valuation. So this is doing the Zillow we talked about earlier, estimated market value. So this is your suggested list price here. This is the net sheet, marketing action plan, commission distribution, intelligent pricing and timing, and then we can wrap it up. So that is the live presentation. So let me just point out too, you can do a slideshow as a last order of presentation format. So we know we can do the PDF, we know we can do the live presentation like Zoom or Skype or whatever you're using, Teams. The other option is to do, if you're doing like a live presentation with like a projection screen to a bunch of different people, maybe a condominium association, you're gonna make a bid to list a few of their condos. You could maybe switch over to slideshow presentation. And to do that, you click on the 3 dots and then click on view slideshow. And it's sort of like a PowerPoint sort of presentation. It's got its own format and it can't really be changed. So let me just, you kind of just go through the pages. It's somewhat interactive. You can click on some of the comps to go to the details of that comp. And then you can like kind of click down to see the photos, click on a photo, but it's a slide-based sort of presentation. So as you go to the slides, you can talk about each property. Maybe you have like a paper with you with more details. And so this is just visual in the background as you kind of go through the CMA. So that's a slideshow, and that's an option. And just like one more thing I want to point out, and it's nothing to do with the CMA, it's just a Cloud CMA gives you also a landing page. This comes with your base account. So if they give you a one-page website that you can direct people to, where they can go and just type in the address of their property and figure out the value of their property. It sends them like a market report or a light CMA. So to get access to this, you'd click on your silhouette in the upper right-hand corner and you'd go to lead generation. And this will bring up the website that you get from Cloud CMA. So this is the actual view landing page. This is your website. So you can click on that. And basically the idea is you would direct people to this site. And when they want to figure out what their house is worth, and they can go here and just type in the address of their house. And then it says, we found it. Please let us know where we should email your home valuation report. And I could say, well, name, this is my email. And it's optional if they want to fill in their phone number or square feet of their home, but I could say email my report, and this will cause Cloud CMA to generate kind of a light CMA. It's not going to have any input from you. It'll send it back to the client within like a minute. So I like the page, I like the idea, but I don't like the fact I don't have input into this home valuation reports. So you can change that. You can go into Cloud CMA, hit your silhouette, hit lead generation, and make sure that this is unchecked, which is called automatically email a finished report to all your web leads. If that's unchecked and somebody goes to your landing page and requests the value of their property, Cloud will send you an email with the information saying, this person's requesting it, this is the address, and you can go and do a full CMA and then send that to them. So it doesn't automatically respond back within a minute with just a very light CMA. This will just not send that to them, but notify you they're requesting it. And then you can do a full CMA. So how do you get people to your landing site? Well, you can Facebook it, tweet it, I guess pin it on Pinterest. And then you can also embed it, which means like if you have your own site, you can make it look like a widget in your site. But I recommend, this is an idea I was thinking, is just make it part of your email signature. So you got an email signature on like Outlook or whatever you use. So on the bottom, you could have a link that says find out what your home's worth. And when they click on it, it goes to copy link, it goes to this landing page where they can do that. So that could be useful as well, but it's not an option here, but I could see that working. So that's all included. Everything I've covered today has been included with your base account. If it's pay option, I pointed out. So yeah, that's included. Just want to make you aware of that. And there's more, but I'm out of time.